relationships here at FIT, you know, so two really big things.
That's great. And can you tell us what you studied while you were here?
Yeah, so I studied fashion design. My specialization was in children's wear. And I would say the reason I chose children's wear was because it was a small program and I knew I could get extra attention. You know, I could get extra face time with my professors. And I also am, I would say I'm a colorful person and I am a child at heart. So it's really fun and kind of carefree to design for children. It's not what I've done for most of my career. I've probably worked in mostly menswear, but the brands I've worked for have also been quite fun and, you know, almost vibrant and children's wear for adults. So, yeah, so that's why I ended up in children's wear. But it afforded us, the other thing was that it afforded us really cool trips. We had the children's wear club was, you know, we got to go to Vegas, we go to Magic, and yeah, so really cool industry experiences too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you remember a favorite class while you were here?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest classes that they were, I don't know if they're still doing it now, but I think it was a kind of like a pilot program when we started, was we took a practicum class. And it was like, we had an internship class, but that was different. Practicum was that you got to, the concept was that you were a mock designer at a company, and you got to pretend, you know, they treated you as a designer. So you got to design a collection, and whoever was in charge of you, designer, director, whoever it was, would give you feedback, and it was like a real work experience, which I think, you know, school can train you a lot, but the amount of collaboration and interpersonal stuff you have to do outside the real world is no one can really prepare you for that. That's the truth, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that was a really awesome. That was one way of the school helping us with that, and I really loved it because it was like an opportunity to get out of your head in campus and out of the school zone and really like get out into the world. And also really, I'm a designer because I love to sew. I just really love fabric and construction, working with my hands. I love draping, so you know, the like real that stuff, the draping classes, and the you know your real fashion classes. I love those too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now probably looking back, it's fun to just play like that without, financial concerns.
Yeah, and you just don't do very much of that in the world, you know, as a designer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, it's kind of feedbacky
Yeah,
still.
there is.
Maybe
I know.
like,
Do you think maybe we just
just go without it.
shout about it?
Yeah, just go.
I can
Yeah.
project.
You guys can
Yeah.
probably
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
me.
You guys
yeah.
can hear in the back. You're welcome to move down.
I'll try. I'll yell.
Nice.
So how did you get that first job out of school?
Yeah, so it was actually a professor at FIT. I was taking, so it's going to age me a little bit, but one of our the pilot programs that they decided to, FIT decided to influence us a little bit more in computers. So this was 2008. We weren't requiring computers to go to school here, which is really wild to say. So we had this one little class our senior year that was like a website portfolio class, which now I have to assume is a great focus of FIT. But we, at the time, you know, it was a very like forward thinking class, and I was really into computers. I already had a website portfolio, so my teacher, my professor, Stephen Cutting, he was an adjunct professor. I think it was the only class he taught, and he kind of pointed me out. He's like, "You are obviously bored. Like, let's get you a job. You're about to graduate. Like, I'm here to get you a job. So let's do that." And he made me write a list of all the places that I wanted to work. And while they were all children's wear, I had put in a few like streetwear companies. And just to throw it in there, I lived in Harlem most of the time that I went to FIT, and I really like resonated with the culture there. So I put some of the like cool brands that my friends there were wearing. And he shared an office with the trim vendor of one of those brands. And
Perfect.
he brought me in and to meet her, and she was like, "I don't know, they owe me money, I'll email them." And they emailed me and were like, "Yes, we need an assistant."
Perfect.
And that was it. And then I was there working for Artful Dodger.
That's
so France.
so fun.
Yeah. But I think about that all the time because I think like for me, FIT was a lot of like learning skills, but also the connections. You never know who you're gonna meet anywhere. Like
Yeah.
you just never know. And it was the most perfect thing.
Yeah.
And then I remember going to the interview and they were like, please never tell her that you came here because we like owe her a lot of money and but we really need an assistant.
You're like, red flag.
I was like, okay, like wide-eyed, like, yeah, okay, cool. It was a really hilarious like beginning to the industry. And I remember it poured and I showed up just like soaking wet. But I brought my laptop and they were like, well, can you show us your work? And I was like, what do you want to see? And they're like, you brought your laptop? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what to show you. What is it? And they're like, well, what do you have on there?
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know. Yeah.
And now it's pretty common for people to bring their iPad
I
on
mean,
an interview.
this again, it's just crazy to me. It wasn't like that. I'm not like ancient, you know what I mean? Like it's just crazy how far we've come. Yeah. I think if you like only had a hand-drawn portfolio, it would be kind of weird.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally. Everyone I ever interviewed would have,
depending on what you're interviewing for.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
yeah. So
That's great. And so, how long did you stay in the streetwear?
I did that for like 4+ years. It was this little small brand that Jay-Z had just bought up. And so it went through some very interesting changes, but what it gave me the opportunity to do was, as an assistant, you're an inexpensive pay. So as their transitions went from different factories and different things, different partners, I kind of got kept on. And so it was nice because I went from being one of a couple of assistants to several designers to all of a sudden I was like the only designer and then there were some part-time people and we went through a few different creative directors, but it was a really interesting experience being young and, just like seeing how it all worked, have relationships with factories overseas. There's a lot of things that you learn about. I mean, it's like indescribable when you go to your production class and you learn about overseas manufacturing and it's like FOB and landed costs and it's just like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
But when you're out in the world and it's really like you can really put that experience, someone says, oh, well, this is the landed cost. You're like, oh, I know what that means. And I think I don't know. So it was really interesting to go through those different phases and we would like we were under one company. It was the same brand, so every time it was the same label, but we were under one company and they like weren't paying their bills, so they got pushed into bankruptcy and we lost our job. They're like, don't worry, Jay-Z still owns this brand. So we're gonna go down the street and you're gonna interview for your job back at this other company that's gonna like keep it afloat and your label. I was like, okay, and we like went down the street and interviewed for our job back. And they called us a few weeks later and I went in and it was a different team, but it was still me. And we kept going. It was I don't know, it was a very interesting experience.
You have the most positive take, I think, on a challenging company environment.
Just like anything else, it teaches you how the world works. I think, it's really fun to be a design student because you can just you can do whatever you want. When you get out into the world, you realize that money, time, all of these things like the business chooses your designs, that's the real deal. That's what you said, it pays the bills. But it doesn't mean that it's like less glamorous, Even the highest end designers, Virgil Abloh is like, he has to answer to the business.
Right.
So you can like still have fun doing it.
Yeah.
but it's the truth,
Yeah.
you do answer to other people, no matter what kind of work you're doing,
Yeah. It's an art and a science for sure.
It's true. Yeah.
You touched just a little bit now about going overseas and dealing with production firsthand. And wonder if you could talk a little bit about that experience. I don't actually think we've spoken about it much in this room. Just what it can be like to be in a factory.
That was a very, very specifically working at Chubby's was like was just so rich in travel, and it was unbelievable. I think one December, I left on December 3rd, and I flew to Tokyo. We went to China. We went to Vietnam. I went to India, Turkey, London, New York, and then back. At the time, I lived in San Francisco.
Wow.
I got to literally fly around the world until I flew back on the 23rd of December, and all of those, most of them were factories with a little bit of inspiration on either side. Traveling the world it is the most humbling thing. Realizing that every piece of clothing, I don't care where you buy it and how much you paid for it, hundreds, if not thousands of hands have touched that garment before it came to you. I got to go to vertical factories. You hear about them again in these production classes. That class was like the bane of my existence, and I hated it. All of that like business and manufacturing. It is what I do 100% of my time. I make tech talks, I draw, I design things, I create, I tell other people in other countries who don't speak English as a first language how to make them. And I interact with people, to go to a mill where they take the yarns and they put them onto, an actual mill and watch the mill create the twills, then go to the places where they're finishing them, dyeing them, processing, all the way to, the sewing line, the wash houses. We worked a lot with Abercrombie factories, so I got to go to these huge, huge vertical factories, and again, spend the day going through each point of the process, and realize that when you're spending like $59.99 on a pair of, Hollister khakis, and you're like, oh, this is so expensive. Maybe not you, but in the world. This is literal hundreds of hands, people, seeing people hand scrubbing denim so that they look worn on the front of their, front of their jeans, and realizing that like if you buy pre-distressed denim, that is how it's pre-distressed, by hand. Someone is hand sandpapering your jeans. And again, no matter where you're buying them. And I think like that changes you as a designer.
Yeah.
We know sewing, right? We're in the classes, we understand it's a lot of work, blood, sweat, and tears. But the line, to see like a line where they have a ticker at the end that says that's like the time of how long it should take for something to start at the beginning of the line, and sew down it. So like, at the line it might be like, you start with the front, and then you have to sew the facing and the different stitches and put on the pocket, and they have a machine that does the pocket. But for that, the front panel to be sewn from here to here, or like a full garment, that is a very worldly view, when you see that. You see how like it's bigger than just clothing. It's bigger than just fashion.
Yeah.
And it's incredible.
So how do you feel it changes as a designer? Just because of the processes you would then choose? Or?
Yeah, like when you're designing, you think, can that manufacturer actually sew this? Or I saw they have this machine that they're capable of doing this. This vendor is perfect for this idea. You realize the specialization, you realize the humanity behind it, right? You realize when you're designing like how much something will cost and why it costs that, right? And also, we all kind of know that our industry is taking a toll on the environment, right? This is something we talk about a lot. It's been talked about for a long time. And so that's something else, to really see it firsthand, to really see how the environment affects nature there in so many different ways. It makes you think twice. Like I think twice about using rayon because I know that China just is deforesting itself to supply the world with soft rayon. It's a fact. And so I like think about those things, and I remember, that's like one nugget of information that you learn when you're out in the world.
Important information.
Yeah.
What did you feel like was the hardest part about getting started in the industry? Clearly it wasn't finding a job. That went pretty well. But yeah.
For me, which I would say, I think like again, this is dating myself. I think it was the compute, how much we use the computer. I use Adobe Illustrator and Excel. Excel is a big one too. I do a ton. The amount of business type of stuff that I manage which is not something that, I mean, I understand, like, why would that be something that's like taught in our program, right? It's a more business-ended thing, it's a business-minded thing, but it is a huge part of my job. Making bills of materials, I think we talked about bill of materials once in college for very good reasons, because whoever wants to talk about them? It's literally a list of every item that goes onto every garment you design, and it's just a spreadsheet. But I think, you know, drawing, making tech hats, how much I have to describe how something is sewn visually, you know, not actually doing it. I sometimes, every once in a while, I can't draw it or I can't get it right, and I do actually sew it myself and ship it across seas. But it takes that takes days. Sometimes you don't have days.
Yeah.
Sometimes it needs to be right now. So for me, getting used to how much time I spent drawing and describing things in Illustrator, because I just wanted to sell. That's really what it was. But like that's not a sustainable life choice.
Yeah.
To pay my bills. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mentioned the blog post and how you were connected with Mina Harris to design the coats. I wonder if you could talk us through that whole.
Yes. So Plum, I have the founder of Plum, Alexia Panza. She is. I actually connected with her when I was working in Artful Dodger at Jay-Z. I was getting paid very little money, and so I looked for other side jobs. And I was like, I need to expand myself. I study children's wear. I want to do what I'm passionate about. And I actually found her. She had posted on Craigslist looking for a designer to start a boys' wear line. And I can't believe now that I'm saying this out loud, but I went and met her in a cafe in New York City from a Craigslist post. It's really crazy to say. And she was, you know, a year younger than me, and so also quite new in the industry, but she had this dream, and she was like, I have funding, I want to do this. And so I've dabbled with her on and off and throughout many different projects. Plum is this tutu brand. It's so adorable. It's based off of tons of tulle, and it really is just based on that one silhouette. There's so many other things that they dabble in, but that it all goes back to the tutu and the party that goes with the tutu. And Alexia is like a PR queen. Like she just knows how to make connections. She reaches out to all sorts of celebrities all the time. And so they made a connection with Mina, but way before the inauguration. And when we realized what was going to happen, we knew she would be there. And we were, for whatever reason, I remember it was like over Christmas break, she called me and was like, we have to design an outfit. I reached out to Mina. She said, basically, they can't legally tell you if they're going to wear your stuff, and they can't even say who it is, like whose stuff it is. But she said, yes, I'd be interested. You can pitch. So we had this whole meeting, and you know, it was like, what do we do? What is it? I mean, this was such a big deal, right? Like, do we do what colors? Like, I felt like I was back in like fashion history 101, right? I'm pulling out like photos of, you know, suffragettes. Do we do purple? Do we do yellow? Do we do like, you know, do we do the Victorian collar? Like, what are all the things that we pitch? And we talked for 2 hours. It was me, the picture in the blog post, was me and another woman. It's if you want. The other woman is my best friend Susan, who is my roommate at FIT and is our production director. So that is why there's a picture of me and her at my wedding.
Oh, okay.
That's why there's like, yeah, that's Susan. Her and I were walking by Nagler. I'm like, oh, that's where we used to live, in Nagler. And it was the three of us talking about this. And after like 2 hours of meeting, I pulled up that picture, the old picture of Nina when she was a little girl, that had just been all over the press, and become this like iconic photo of her. And I was like, what if we made those? And it was like everything else fell away. It was like, that's it. That's it.
I'm sorry, but it's Kamala right now.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Kamala, little Kamala and her mom, and then that's Nina's mom. Yeah. Like, what if leopard and like faux fur are so in? Why not do this? And that was it. So I started to work, you know, in our world, you start to like find a sample room. Like I was in Oakland, and like I'll find a sample room in Oakland. I'll find some fabric. We'll do do it. And then Mia said, well, it was like Thursday night. And Mia said, well, I need it Friday by 8 p.m. I'm sorry, I need it Monday by 8 p.m. And I'm like, it's like Thursday night. We can't. And so we kind of just sat there, and I realized, okay, I think I can make these. And I got off the call, and I went over to my husband, and I'm like, I'm sorry, because this is going to take over our whole life, but I think I need to make these coats. And he's kind of like, he knows me and Harry Kamala. I mean, everybody I talk to, they're like, okay, yeah. And I was like, it's Kamala Harris's great nieces. I know that sounds really like far away, but just wait, I think. So I made them, and that was like, I feel like I really pulled out some old school FIT times, you know?
Custom made.
Custom made. So I mean, yeah, we ran around the Bay Area to all of the different stores buying this fabric. We got every single piece of yardage we could find in the Bay Area, and got it from a chain store. And I just went to town. I had to make a pattern. I made a muslin, sewed it halfway through, and then realized, okay, I think this is good. I sent some pictures. We're like, yep, okay, great. And so by Friday afternoon, I was on my way, and then I graded the second one, and then like right in the last, it's like midnight on Sunday night, and I realized I gotta put my name in this. Like I need to, so I broke out my Cricut machine and I made like custom labels. And I put my name in it. Like this is a big, I think a big deal.
Yeah.
And we actually didn't have confirmation, so we didn't know. No one ever said anything. I sent them into the abyss, and that was the end of it. No one ever said anything to us. We had no idea. And then I got up at like 6 a.m. on the inauguration morning, and it's dark out. And I'm watching, and they're in the church, and there's no press in the church. And then the doors open, and they all start coming out, and I see this tiny little arm that was like faux fur. And I just really started screaming. And my husband like broke me, like came out of the room, was like, "What is going on right now?" And I'm like, "They're wearing them. They're wearing them on national TV right now." But what I didn't know was how it would be. They became like the icons of the day. And I don't think any of us really understood what that meant. But I just think it was like, first of all, they're the children. I mean, if there's anything that brings hope in the world, it's the children, right? And it really is like the epitome of why I like children's wear. Kids are free. They can wear, anything, right? They can do what they want. And nobody judges them. They're like, yeah, princess costume, amazing. Yeah. So, and also, that was such a moment in history for women, for people of color, for so many reasons. There was this moment, like, first of all, they were in the inauguration, and the younger one wouldn't let her dad put her down the whole time, so it was like Lady Gaga singing, and she's like floating up in the corner. People are getting sworn in, and there's just like this little like leopard poof in the background of everything. And then all these iconic pictures with Hillary Clinton, with all these, the most iconic people, right? And but there was this moment when they were walking down to the White House, and I have this amazing New York Times picture of her holding their hands, Kamala holding their hands. I was like, this is like a textbook moment, this is true. And it wasn't, I didn't know that, going into it, but really that was such an honor.
That's awesome.
And who would have, it was just like this perfect storm of events that happened that way.
Yeah.
To have Rachel Maddow talk about that. The other thing is that, so Alexia, I told you all about Alexia, because the minute we realized we didn't know they were going to wear them. So the minute we realized, she went to town and made sure that every single press outlet had these sketches. Had sketches that we did of our inspiration and that photo of Kamala, right? So here we are, they're walking down to the White House, and Rachel Maddow is on TV, everybody is watching this, and she's like, this is the inspiration of your coat, these are inspired by, this brand, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, especially in children's wear, how often do you have people showing your sketches, your inspiration sketches, talking about why you design something? Like, the reality is that everything that you buy, somebody had a concept behind, right? We're always like told our job is to tell a story of why we're designing this thing we're designing, right? And to have it shown, it's rare that people are talking about why you're doing it, They talk about the color, your coat, it's pink, this, but no one's like, oh, that, the shuttle collar or the notch or the,
Inspired by X, Y, and Z.
exactly, right?
So cool.
But to have them talking about that, I was like, this is,
And made in the USA.
yeah, and handmade,
Handmade.
and also in Oakland, which was like so special to their family too.
Yeah.
Which that just happened to be. I just happened to live there.
Yeah.
But
That's really cool.
yeah, I didn't get to hand deliver it, which I was really sad about. But it was COVID, so
Yeah.
you know.
Was not a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
And did you guys actually end up producing them?
So they are, yes. We that was the perfect thing. So we didn't know if they were gonna wear them. So we like, and it was such a last minute thing. So the minute we realized it, we put them for sale, and it was a wild ride getting them. But they're now online. So it was like the spring, so it was hard to sell fur coats, but we did do a small run. It was really special. We just brought them back this winter, and they're doing really well. It's really fun.
It's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a great new category for our brand because it's not tutus.
Yeah. Yeah. Diversifying.
Yeah.
So you spoke a little bit about how you wanted to do children's wear while you were here at FIT. Then you went obviously into streetwear for a bit. How did you decide to come back, or what has drawn you?
It was just happenstance. I think it goes back to connections. I was laid off the first week of the pandemic. Designers work a year out plus, so we're kind of the first ones to go when cash flow gets a little crazy. But I actually like always see it as just a new leaf. It's the first couple days you're like, but then you just move on and can do other things. It's almost like being set free. As a creative mind, you're like full of things. You're full of ideas. So, jobs can be almost stifling for too long because it's just like too much of the same. So it was like okay. And the pandemic was so bizarre. So it set me free into the world. And late last year, Alexia found me. She called me and said, "What are you doing? I want, will you come and work on this project with me?" She had gotten married a couple years before that, and she had an overseas factory make a run of tutus for all of the little girls in her wedding, and that's how the brand started. And it's become a culty brand. The women, mostly women that are buying it, it's just like such a hot commodity. There's a resale market for it. That's really wild. I'm part of a group on Facebook that is a very interesting group. Yes, very dedicated. Yeah. Which I love. It's so interesting to see people be so dedicated to clothing making.
Yeah.
Feels like a big responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Who do you feel like is the most interesting person you've met in the industry?
Ooh, okay. So that one this is the one question I had to really think about. Okay, his name is Jess Hart. He is I would say, the number one clothing reseller person in the world. He is located in Tacoma, Washington, in a very secret location that you have to know the person to know a person to let you go. He does not have a website. His company is called Orange Crush, but you'll never find it. If you guys ever want to go, I will gladly hook you up with him. He owns a double warehouse that's connected in Tacoma, and it has just absolute mountains of used clothing. And he is the place that you go. He's the only one in that world that I know. He's the professional picker, right? Like that's his job. But he's the only person in that realm that is also doing like a booth at the Magic trade show. And people go to buy from him from everywhere, every single brand. He's like the number one guy that Nike goes to inspiration by, right? So everybody goes vintage shopping, but he's the guy, like, you have to work for his prices. Like literally, I go in with like a fanny pack and like hand sanitizer and like, I'm ready to climb. Like you are climbing a 17-foot pile of t-shirts, and you can make as big as the mess you want, and you get a full day. And he has like a day minimum, and you just go and you dig, and you just put stuff on a table, and he gives you a price for the day.
Wow. And you're saying he's very reasonable.
Everything, yeah. It's not like it's the wholesale.
It's not like vintage Williamsburg price.
No. It's so. I mean, I have this 80s satin bomber jacket. I'm from Massachusetts. It's Celtics. It's in mint condition. This thing it's worth hundreds of dollars, and I bought it for $20 from him.
Wow.
He doesn't care. His thing, and he's a very, very kooky man. He's very weird. He's probably like about my age, maybe a little bit older. He's like fourth generation doing this. And
Crazy there's been demand now.
well, it's literally he is an inspiration outlet for the industry. And it's okay. Like yeah, like you can go to Williamsburg. Like so when I was working at Chubby's, that's who they would send me to go inspiration shopping. And I would go to see Jess in Tacoma, and I'd also go to Williamsburg and shop that. And see, like, if you want to see like the trends, like you go to Williamsburg, it's like curated amount of stuff, so that's how you kind of know what's going on, right? But you can go to Jess to dig for things that you would never even
Forecast.
yeah, or like create something that you have the world hasn't seen since 1960s.
Yeah.
Or sometimes the 1800s. He's got like crazy piles of like military and I mean anything. It's amazing. It's organized chaos.
Yeah.
But when you said you used the word interesting, and I was like, I've met a lot of interesting people, but he to me is he takes the cake.
Yeah, that sounds cool. My sister lives in Tacoma. I'm gonna have to see if she knows anything about this.
Oh yeah, I wonder if people know about him in the community.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's so bizarre. I remember the first time I went by myself too, and I just remember being like, this is either gonna be really good or not really good.
Yeah.
So
hopefully, yeah, make it out alive.
yeah.
So, I assume over the years you've had to do some hiring, and wondering if you can share some advice on what you look for in an entry-level candidate.
Yeah, I think, okay, working hard, cliche to say, but it's not everyone is capable of doing it. Being really dedicated to the job and realizing following directions. Realizing that sometimes the way people do things is it's just like what they want, but there usually is purpose. And I think, especially as an assistant designer, I got a lot of what I considered like almost admin jobs that I thought, why is this so important? But it is. It is important. And if you do it well, it makes all the difference in the world. And I think like it's not those aren't like crazy complicated things and conceptually, but they're real, you know? I've had a lot of amazing assistants. I've also had a lot of not amazing assistants. And the biggest divide is how well they listened to what I said and went away and did it. And really come back and say, and show me that they listened to what I said. It's huge. It really is everything. And the directions, following the directions. Process is huge in our industry. And the process is, I'll give you an example, and this is something that happened to me last week of me not following the process. My company is sitting on thousands of yards of a fabric that I didn't quite closely look enough in a moment, and we're sitting on it because it's really our vendor. But it was a huge issue, and it really came down to like the tiniest like admin moment that in that moment, usually I do 100 times a day and it's not really that big of a deal. But in that one switch, there it is. And I think like I realize now in my position, I understand the trickle down effect, right? And I'm like, oh man. But as when I was an assistant, I was always like, who cares about this? Who cares about filing these swatches? Who cares about cutting Pantones and setting them? And I would spend all day like making Pantone palettes. I'm like, who even looks at these? Now I realize I look at those every day. Those were the most important things. And realizing that like take value in the jobs that you're given because everything matters. They really do.
Yeah.
Even if it's just internal, like making everybody in your team, making sure everybody in the team is on the same page or has the same materials or feels like they know what's going on. It's huge.
Yeah.
That's
great. And how do you feel like you kind of suss out candidates?
I think
see that they have these qualities.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to interview. I think like I think it's more and more common to go through like series of interviews now. I'm seeing that trend. I think that like the vetting process almost, and then also after a vetting process, having a gap of like trial time. I really like to hire interns to hire. That is like my favorite thing to do. I feel like I have a lot to teach. I feel like I can give a lot of structure, and that's the best way to test. I like, and I mean paid internships. That's my,
Yeah.
Like come in, work a few hours here and there, and let's see what's going on, right?
Yeah.
That's the best way.
It's your job to keep.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's common elsewhere too.
Yeah, for sure.
I think like the biggest thing that I would realize working for myself is you can get money. You can get paid. You guys have skills. Everybody has skills. Like get out there. I've made money making photoshopping Instagram posts. Like we have, you have skills. It doesn't have to be exactly what you want to do, but like people need designers. They need creatives in the world.
For sure.
And we have skills to give. So
yeah,
get out there. Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk to us about a typical week in your, and I say that with air quotes.
Yeah. So I work at a startup, and I like working at startups. So I definitely don't have a typical week. My week changes all the time. I have a really small team, or not me. We have a really small team. There's like 6 of us, and we have a ton of freelancers that assist. So I do a ton of management. And I also do, what I like about working in the startup is that I do a ton of like management in my position, but what's awesome about a small company is that you get to do the small stuff and the big stuff. When you work at a big company, it's like all management and no weeds. I like the weeds. I like to touch the fabrics. I like to touch the colors. I like to, I like to make the tech packs, make the designs. It's not as fun to me to direct a team to design. I like doing that. So this week I am designing our fall 2022 line. Or not designing, I have the designs ready. I'm making tech packs for them. So I'm doing all of the like blueprints for the factories to create them. I'm also managing out a meeting after this with our graphic designer who is going to do some graphics. I have the concepts out there, and she this week is going to bring them to life for me. Sometimes my weeks are just mostly emails, development. I do a ton of the sourcing and development, so I go back and forth with factories all over the world, and they are mostly in other countries and 12 hours difference usually, so they will, I email during the day, I do all of my, I make a lot of decisions, give them a lot of information, and then overnight they process it, and then, source the fabric I'm looking for, the pom-pom, the sparkles. It's a fun part of my job. So sometimes it's that. I do a lot of meetings, but what's fun is it's different every week, which is why that's why I'm not working at, I've started, I've interviewed at Gap or Old Navy or Banana Republic, those places, and it wasn't for me because I like to be involved in all different things and have it be different every week.
Yeah.
So
that's great. And is Island Plum strictly direct to consumer, or do you guys have some wholesale business too?
We do wholesale. I would say Saks is our biggest wholesaler at the moment. But the pandemic specifically really changed our mentality towards D2C. So that is also a huge shift. I think, when I worked here in New York City, I had only ever worked for wholesalers and that mentality. Instead of merchandisers, we had buyers. I'm sorry, we had buyers, we had salespeople, right? Now I'm working with like buyers, people who actually, I work internally with somebody who's going to buy the things I design. So it's the realization of, well, what do you want me to design? And then you can buy,
Yeah, less wasted time.
Yeah. It's so interesting, so much data.
More partnership.
So much, well, in the right group, yes.
Yeah.
I worked at Chubby's. We were in the Silicon Valley. We had a guy that was running data. He reaped him from Google, and he could tell you what your customer was going to buy and what he wasn't going to buy. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
It was so fun. It was so inspiring to have someone before you even go into a season, because the big question is, why do you do what you do? Why did you choose these colors? Why? He would literally come to me and be like, if you do a basketball short, they will come. They will come to you. If you build it, they will come. They will come and buy these shorts. And I did it, and they would buy them. And it was like, wow, how do you do this? It was magical to work with someone internal. I can tell you that. Because when you work in wholesale, it's kind of like tossing out a bunch of things and hoping.
Well, maybe this guy likes it, this guy likes it, this guy likes it, but not everyone. or one person likes it, but it's not enough units to make it happen, so then it dies. Yeah.
So it's very interesting to work for D2C, and also have like the marketing and everything is interconnected. It's cool because you learn a lot about the business.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I can totally see that.
Yeah.
What do you feel is the most challenging part of your current role as design director?
Management. Being a manager is hard. I think this doesn't matter what you do for your job. If you have a specialization, you're not. It's rare that you go to school for being a manager, right? And interpersonal relationships, everything. I don't care what you do, right? Even if you like work as a server at a restaurant, dealing with your coworkers, dealing with your customers, you have to do it all, right? And being a manager, really having, because being a manager is more than just telling people what to do. Your job is to help them grow. Your job is to care about them. It's like being a teacher,
Yeah.
And in addition to your job, in addition to being what you have to do. And that's hard. It's hard because if somebody's having a really bad time or there are two people on your team who are not getting along, they're not communicating, it's like, that's a hard thing. And I'm not saying I'm the best at it, right? I don't think a lot of people struggle with that, especially when you're like, oh man, I just really want to come and do my job today. Like, I'm sorry that you're fighting with your coworker, But I think, or getting people, if they don't want to communicate or they're anxious about it, being on the same page or disagreeing, compromise. It's all real. It's all things. It's the things we struggle with every day. But I think, managing is different. It's a different skill set for sure.
Yeah. How do you keep yourself informed of the latest trends? And I imagine it's probably a little different streetwear versus children's wear, but
yeah. I think either way, just like being aware of what's going on, watching. People watch all the time, everywhere I go, right? No matter where you go, in a restaurant, on the subway, it doesn't matter where, like, you're in the tiniest town in the Midwest, you're in LA, you're in New York, you're gonna see fashion. People express themselves, right? And I think if you pay attention, you can see it. You can see it there, And also, we have the internet now, so you can just like immerse yourself with things that inspire you. Like that's what I try to do. I try to follow as many creatives, artists, anything that fucking inspires me.
That's great.
I look for inspiration anywhere. Yeah.
What would you say is your style philosophy?
Do what makes you comfortable, wear what makes you comfortable, express yourself. I don't think there's like any limits. I think you should break boundaries. I think don't let don't let tags or society or like when you read a tag that says like if it's for men or for women, if you want to wear it and you don't fall into that, like wear it. What's stopping you? I think anybody can wear whatever makes them feel good. That like you are in your best form when you feel good about yourself. So
that's great. I love that. What do you feel like is one of the biggest challenges facing this industry right now? This industry as a whole.
That's an easy one. The shipment crisis is real. We've been talking about this for over a year, and it's been just like coming like a crazy freight train.
Slow freight train coming at us.
And we've been very lucky at Plum, but it is not an exaggeration what's going on, and it's not. It doesn't seem like there's an end in sight. And
it's crazy when you go in stores right now how bare they are.
Yes, and understand. So I think like it's hard to conceptualize, right? So you're like, well, why can't people just like the product? Why can't you just get the product? But understand. So like we'll run into issues like we have the shirts, but we're on a shortage of 12-inch hangers, and Saks requires 12-inch hangers for our clothing. So we have the clothing to ship to Saks, but we can't get the hangers. It's that type of stuff. You can't get, your brand. I spent all this time approving very special hang tags that have I Love Palm on them. They're very curated, it's very special. But if we can't like get that hard stock in supply, at what point do you say, well, I mean, well, you can't ship it without a hang tag, right? So like these are the types of things. Like I've noticed a lot of the products I buy, they'll come like things online. They're coming in like different shipment packaging or like different, and you can tell they're not getting their customized packaging because
they're just making it work.
they're just making it work. They're just making it work, you know. So that's the stuff like, you know, that tiny little piece of adhesive that you really need on this one thing that you're making that like kills the whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's so that it's like again the domino effect of like, well, we can't because we get that sticker, we can't do any of that.
Right.
So, but it's real, and I'm so curious to see what happens.
This month.
I know. This is real.
Yeah.
Weeks from now.
Yeah.
We're just gonna. I think everything in Black Friday it's just gonna be nothing, and then we're gonna have like nothing for the rest of December. I don't know.
I mean, I don't go often, but I went to Marshall's last week, and I was just like shocked at how much they're flapping the breeze with their stock because that is not a typical off-price philosophy. Usually they're swimming and stuff, and it's actually overwhelming and hard to shop. If they had so little, it was shocking.
Yeah. And I think about how like a lot of people don't understand why. It's right, so more and more news are talking about it and everyone talks about like the ships off of LA, right? But I mean I've been like again, I've been talking about this for months at family dinners and stuff and everyone's like, why are you talking about this? Like, aren't you a fashion designer? And I'm like, no you guys, like this is real. Like,
yeah. Start shopping for Christmas now.
Yes.
Like, it's July for me.
Get crafty, make your own gifts this year.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, it's a struggle. And it's especially a struggle because we work so far out. So like I'm putting together a stock box for fall and I'm asking my factories, I'm gonna send them out and I'm gonna ask my factories for a price that they can give me for a year from now. How can you price that? How can you, because that's including shipping. How can these poor people even say what shipping will cost them next year?
Yeah.
It's so nothing, it used to be that everything was like kind of regular with a little inflation, but now it's all over the place.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And COVID has changed that a lot too, right? Which that's made a lot of struggles. Yeah, it's like different countries are handling it different. China has a pretty strong rule, so between that and energy shutdowns, they'll just come into a town and they'll shut a county down, no one in or out, and they'll go around and shut down certain mills. So we have issues that like supply chain issues, like a mill that was making our fabric gets shut down, and we just have to start from square one again.
Yeah.
So that's difficult. COVID has made things very challenging.
Yeah.
But it's also made like direct to consumer so much more possible. People are weirdly consumerism is booming.
Yeah.
Which is part of the shipping issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the perfect storm, really.
For sure. Everyone's got so much cash and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And inflation's coming.
And we're all sitting at home online. Everyone's made a website, so now we're like, ooh, we can buy, right?
Oh, well, that is my. That was all I have.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
turn over to the students and
Cool.
questions from them.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I was wondering specifically about children's wear. It's an industry where the parents or guardians have the purchasing power.
Yeah.
So when you're designing, where is the balance between designing for the parents and designing for the kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. So going back to like purchasing behavior and then also that influencing why you design things, you have to please everybody and you get opinions from both sides. You have to take it both into account. So I think one of the best ways that I interact with this and absorb both of those things is I have fit models. So you can get professional fit models, but obviously kids grow, so it's a really big rotation. So what I do is my way of dealing with this is I try to, when I get a style to a certain point, I get a bunch of different sizes and I have moms who have kids in different sizes that I can just ship to them and let both the children and the moms have an opinion about it. And it's always so fascinating. My favorite is to do in person because kids will say one thing and moms will say different often. So you have to remember that, you know. You have to remember that kids want something really soft but moms want something really fluid. floofy. So you have to find just the right tool and have it not like touch their legs, but be, have enough stiffness. Like, right? You have to find the compromise. And we do take both into account all the time because ultimately the parents have the purchasing power, but they will buy something that their kid is obsessed with. So that's what makes that tutu genius. It's the most simple thing in the world, but kids have to, once you give them one, forget it.
Yeah.
They have to have one.
That's true. Well, I mean, as a parent of a daughter who started somewhat easy to dress and very much grew into an extreme challenge to dress, it was interesting because when I worked in a children's wear company, she was so little, and I was only thinking about what the mom would be buying because I think 3 and under.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't have an opinion, and the mom really cares what she's wearing, or the parents really care what she's wearing. But once they start getting an opinion, it's really hard. It's really hard as a parent.
Yeah.
And comfort is, in my house, the most important thing.
Very important. Very important.
Yeah.
Because comfort means it's better for everybody, right? And ease. Something that like you learn, and this was stuff like we were taught in children's wear, but also it's very real. The less buttons, the better, because like trying to button something on a toddler is no fun. Nobody wants that. And you also get to learn like fun, like little like fake me out things, like ways to like make it look like a button down shirt, but you can pop it over instead, or like little things that are tricks that like look smart and look like an adult clothing, but still easy to get on kids. So, which is really fun because again, I get into the construction and like the like details of stuff. So that's really fun. I remember doing like one of the brands I worked for. I did like a little. It looked like a button-down plaid shirt and twill shorts, but it was all like one thing as a like onesie. But it looked like it was like tucked in. It's very sweet.
Yeah.
Little preppy babies.
That's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Where do you think you might be career-wise if you weren't in fashion?
I'm sorry,
Or if you were not in fashion and like,
Oh.
where do you think you may be career-wise?
Yeah. I think I'd definitely be doing something creative. So for a while, when I moved to San Francisco, I kind of started using my Adobe skills for other things, and that's when I did a lot more marketing and website stuff. And really, I just taught myself how to do it. And I manage for this brand, Pip and Julie. I manage all of their digital assets: Google Ads, Facebook ads, their website, Instagram, all of that stuff. And I loved it. I did it for about 6 years. It taught me again a lot about business. And ultimately, always in the back of your mind, you think, oh, what if I did my own thing, right? I don't know if I'm there yet, but it's always good to like. I love learning about if I were to do that, what it would take. And so that was something else. And I think I could see myself doing that more. I think about it a lot, going back to it. But yes.
So I'm wondering what kind of like conversations are happening in children's wear about sustainability. I imagine that it's probably different because like by nature parents have to buy clothes and then the kids grow and they have to get rid of them. So I think it's a very different conversation that's happening. I just wonder what that's like.
I think I would argue. Well, okay. Okay. So I think the resale market in children's wear is one of the best. Poshmark, I would say, probably makes most of their money on children's wear resale because there's an abundance of children's wear, and people are gift. It's like the thing that everyone wants to gift. The thing that everyone. You always have so much of it, and kids grow, and they're only going to wear some. Right? Is this your experience?
Yes.
This is everyone's experience. I don't have a child, so but I'm an aunt, and I know that, right?
Yeah.
You always
Secondhand is.
Yes, huge.
And it retains its value. I mean,
Yes.
with stuff that I buy and that I love, I usually wear so much that it's. I mean, I could pass it on to someone. Sure, I could probably sell it, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not perfect quality like baby stuff that maybe gets worn once or twice.
Yeah, or if at all. Like
Yeah.
you go into like a consignment store for adults versus for children. Children, half or 2/3 of it has the tags on it. It's never even worn, right? So I almost want to say that it's inherently more sustainable just for that, right? Now, the other argument is that the reason it's that way is because there is just so much consumerism of it, right? So I don't know. I don't know the stats on that. Is it something that it's not something that is discussed at the brand that I am at. Sustainability is not a focus at our company, and I have learned in different companies that sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. I would say, and we have it's a conversation at every single company, right? Because for instance, hang tags. You have a vendor that says, well, if for 10 cents more, you can use recycled paper. And so then as a designer, I go to my person who's in charge of pricing and say, I mean, for 10 cents more, we can do recycled. And they're like, that's not important to us. So then you're like, okay, that's
10 cents is a lot on a child.
Yeah, well, yeah, for children's wear, for sure. Yeah, it depends on, whatever. It depends on what it is.
Yeah.
The other thing that you learn, especially the other part about manufacturing overseas or going to experience that firsthand, is that you realize that sometimes like using recycled materials is like even worse for the environment. So that's like you get caught in this like vicious cycle of like how to really even be good at how do you good to your environment and still good at your job. So I think that there's balance, but I think I don't know if children's wear is like doing anything specifically different. There are brands that are doing different things, just like in adult clothing. Um, but I think yeah, like the most sustainable thing is the amount of it's like staggering when you talk to a parent and they're like, oh yeah, I could give you drawer full of unused
And
clothing.
people love to give away clothing too.
Oh yeah,
Like my son outgrew all the stuff this fall, and I just blasted a couple friends
right?
who's got some 3T, and I didn't even need to go shopping because I got everything that he would have needed. So.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Interesting, thank you.
yeah.
Hi. So my question is, when is a design just right, like for you?
Ooh. Okay. Um. Huh. I don't know. I would argue that many things they're never going to be perfect, right? So really, this is interesting. I was just having this conversation with a friend about deadlines. I went to a critique of the upperclassmen at this university, and I was one of the critics. And there were some people in the presentations that I realized they had been working really hard mulling over their designs for weeks. They had been really, really, really cranking the wheels. They were exhausted. But in the end, this presentation to somebody who had never been a part of that, here they were showing this presentation, and frankly, there was so little to see that it was lost. And I went away thinking about that because that's so awful. These poor people, they're killing themselves trying to make the perfect thing. And I realized, so I thought about it, and I thought, you know what it is? It's the deadline. Realizing that if you have a deadline, you meet, what do you have to show on that deadline? What is on that day? The day before, you have all the time in the world to get it perfect as possible. But it's really only like 24 hours, and then the next day, that's it, right? So what can you do in the time that you have to the best of your ability? That is when it's just right. And I think the reality is most of the time in our jobs, you have time to rework. It's just presenting where you're at and then keep going. But yeah, there are times that I have to just be like, you know what? All right, we tried our best. This is where it's at. We all like it. It's not perfect, but it's going out into the world. And here's our first chance. Because a lot of times, if it goes out into the world and it sells, you get a second chance to make it better. You wish the sleeves were longer on that. Like, okay, next season we'll make the sleeves longer. You have a chance to always go back and revise. But I think searching for the perfect thing in anything you're never gonna find it. So realizing, this is where I'm at right now. Am I proud of this? Do I like this? Are there flaws that will prevent it from being functional? Then no, then we're good, right? And I think life is about deadlines. So if you just can, feel good on that deadline that you can communicate out and you have a decision made, that's you will go far.
That's why all those TV shows are set up that way, like Project Runway.
I mean, really, that's what it's about, right? Like, and I mean, Project Runway. Yeah, exactly. Like, and I think when you have, it's almost like dangerous to have too much time because you're out there searching for something that it's like you can always evolve, you can always have new ideas, you know. So, yeah. Any other questions? No.
What was your experience like working for menswear compared to children's wear?
Ooh, yeah. Okay, so I don't have a child and I'm not a man. So those two things were similar. What's awesome about menswear was you're dealing with adult humans. So they can usually, you learn how to read or, you learn how to understand how someone describes the feeling of wearing clothing. So we have a sample. I'll say, oh, so it's in the office. Can you put it on? Or my fit model, put it on, and then they can describe to you how they feel. Oh, the waistband feels this way. This is pulling this way, etc. But kids can't really do that, so you kind of have to experience it for them, or listen to their parents, how their parents feel about it. In terms of like culture, also kind of a very different culture. Children's wear is filled with a lot of adults, very like older. It was an older crowd and very like a little bit antiquated. I would say that our company is a little bit more young and fun and a little different. Most of the children's wear industry is pretty antiquated, has antiquated minds. But adult menswear, very fashion forward, very fun.
Well,
Lots of
especially
yeah, especially at like somewhere like Chubby's. They were like the other end of the spectrum.
And the men you were designing for were probably younger.
Yeah. I think our target customer was like 18 to 35.
Yeah.
And then also the influence of Silicon Valley, right? Very like everybody's significant other worked at Facebook or Twitter. It was like that mentality. Everything was like pushing the boundaries. In children's wear, it was like these are how everything's set in the ways. We must do everything the same way we've always done it. And we must make sure that Macy's has. Susan worked for a company that made Macy's every single year their turkey dress. Every single brown.
I know which one you're talking about.
We'd always be like, who's buying this? You know what? There's a lot of people buy that turkey dress.
I've had that handed down to me actually a couple times.
Every year. This is new. It's a little bit different, but just the same. So Macy's could have their turkey dress. And so it's a lot of that, but in menswear, it was like, how do we do things different? How do we make a shorter timeline between the design process and the development and the production? It was always like, boom, 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 let's change it, let's make it different. Tons of activewear too. Activewear is not a children's wear thing as much, obviously, but I learned so much about really cool like performance fabrics, performance stretch, technique, antimicrobial, all different types of stuff like that. You don't really do in children's wear. It's a little bit different. It's because people aren't interested in those qualities. You don't care as much about that type of stuff. You want it to be soft and functional for your kids, right? And have them be able to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Anything else? Cool.
Thank you. This was wonderful. So this is an interesting experience you had, and it was great to hear about it.
Yeah.
Appreciate having you in.
Thank you for your time, everyone.